In this tutorial, we'll go over how to create a stacked timeline, which is basically like a compressed Gantt chart. So now that you have seen the Gantt chart tutorial, this will actually appear much simpler. So we're going to begin setting up our chart. Again, we're using the Ottoman governors data set. So we'll start with our start date. And again, make sure to drag the start date with the calendar icon next to it. So we'll pull that up into columns and then drag the ethnicity variable to color. So now we've got these little rectangles again to indicate different governors and their start dates. So we want to, again, only focus on the data that we do have. So I'm going to exclude the null values. So just as we have in the past, you can either click on them, right click, double click, depending on which version of Tableau you're using. Go ahead and select exclude. So now we've got what will look more like a simple timeline with the ethnicities shown with the colors that you can see here in the legend. I'm going to go ahead and, as I have been doing the other tutorials, I'm going to move that legend card to the bottom so that you can see my worksheet area a little more clearly. Okay, so now that we've gotten our chart basically set up, we want to change our ethnicity from a dimension to an attribute. So go ahead and select the little drop-down arrow that appears on the ethnicity variable pill, this little rounded box here, and notice that it's currently set to dimension. We want to make it an attribute. So go ahead and change that to attribute. And we've already excluded the null values, which is step 4 in the slide here on the left. And again, as we did last time with the Gantt chart, we need to convert our start date, which is currently a dimension we want, or a categorical variable. We want to have that treated as quantitative. So we want to convert this to a measure. So again, we'll go down to the second series of date values here. You can see year, quarter, month, week number, day. This is the version of day that we want. We don't want the first one that you see in that list. We want the second. So go ahead and select that. And notice again that that changes our color of this variable up here from blue, just for dimensions or categorical variables, and it converts it to a measure, which is green. So we've already created the 10-year interval calculated field in the Gantt chart tutorial. So if you skipped over that, you might want to go back and watch that video really quickly, especially for that part about how to create a calculated field, because you'll need that value again. So we're going to take our 10-year interval. These are both the same. You can see here in my Tableau workbook, I had already created this calculated field before I did the tutorial, so I just created a second version of it so you could see that process. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag our 10-year interval from tables to the size card on marks. And that will instantly extend the little lines that you saw just a moment ago into longer blocks that will indicate how long each governor served. So let me just minimize the data values here so that we can actually see our timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and, as usual, give our chart a title. So this is timeline of Constantinian governors' ethnicities. Select OK. And again, we'll want to change that axis label. Right now it says day of start date. Again, you can do that by double clicking or right clicking the axis label, and that will pull up this pop-up window. And we can convert this to tenure dates. Again, when you update an axis label, it automatically saves it. So you can go ahead and simply click the X and it will appear as you've typed it in. A couple of other things that we can do with this, especially if we're going to embed this into a website so that it's interactive, we can give people some more information as they mouse over the timeline. So for example, we can include the transliterated name, which for my purposes with my data set, the names are originally in Arabic script, and they're either Ottoman, Turkish, or Arabic names. And so they've been transliterated, which means converted into a Latin alphabet. So here you can see, this is Jafar Bey. And we've got his ethnicity, the day of his inauguration, 1574. The tenure interval is in days, but that is really difficult for us to interpret. So we can also add their end date, which is up here in tables, and we can take that to tooltip because the tooltip is what we'll see as we mouse over. So now we know their name, their ethnicity, their start and end dates of their tenure. If you wanted, you could grab information on their fate and drag that to the tooltip as well. Make this very informative so we can see what happened to each of these people at the end of their term in office. Now, lastly, we can again update our colors if we want to, for example, if we want to make this a little more colorful and we want Ottoman to be this kind of burnt orange. This is a null value, so we'll exclude that from the legend so that we don't have two competing colors. The rest of this looks fine, except I might want to make the Kululu this light blue and the unknown light gray, as we did in the Gantt chart. Go ahead and click apply and then OK. And then here in the legend, I'm going to select that other burnt orange that you saw that just had the asterisk and exclude that. So we just have the fates of governors in Ottoman Algeria. Again, if you don't like because so many of the governors were Ottoman, if you don't like that as the primary color, you can go back, you can edit colors. Maybe we want to flip this around, something like this. And so you can play with it and get different views so you get the color scheme and pattern that you want. And again, as usual, we just want to make sure that we also update our worksheet title. So I'm going to say this is timeline of ethnicities. I usually use abbreviations down here. This time I didn't. So you can see how large those tabs can get, which is why earlier on you'll see these other labels that are abbreviated and much shorter. Because this is a fairly large workbook, I now have about 15 visualizations in here, and it becomes challenging just to scroll through them all. So that's it. We've created a stacked timeline. This can be something really useful since you have to create a timeline for your project. This can either count as a timeline or it can count as one of your data visualizations, either way. So our next video will be on maps, and then the final will be on creating custom shapes to add to your charts.